point of view, what are we not doing right as individuals, as a church, as the society?
Yeah, thank you. I think these are actually three questions. What are we not doing right as individuals, as church, and then as society? First of all, the individuals make up the church, and then the church is part of society. And the truth is that if we get it right at the individual level, we will invariably get it right at the church and society level. The first thing is that we don't have the consciousness that people's rights need to be and ought to be protected. Apart from the consciousness, we don't have the knowledge. If you just want to put it bluntly, we don't have the knowledge across the board. When I say across the board, I mean people who ought to know don't know. I had the privilege of training medical doctors at some point, and I set simple questions somewhere in the southeast under the auspices of Nigerian Medical Association, and more than 80% of the doctors scored less than 30% as it concerns the rights of both doctors and patients. Even their own rights they didn't know. I've had the privilege of training priests under the auspices of CAN and PFN. I set these tests to get a benchmark of what people know, and you find out that people who should know don't know. And if the leader doesn't know, the followers are not likely to know. And I think that's the fundamental problem. What are we not doing right as individuals? We lack knowledge, and people perish for lack of knowledge. Osinachi literally perished for lack of knowledge, both on her part and on the part of people around her. What could we have done differently in terms of specific action? Most Nigerians do not know that there is a law called the VAP law, Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. The VAP law has criminalized beating up a spouse. It's not a matter for Mona anymore. The VAP law has criminalized threatening to beat up a wife. The threat that I will beat you is an offense.
Just the threat.
The threat is an offense. The VAP law has criminalized telling a woman to get out of my house, not carrying her out physically. The law has criminalized the threat, the carrying out of the action, aiding and abetting the action, and standing by and watching when the action is going on. The church doesn't know, the people don't know, the society doesn't know. Apart from the VAP law, we also have a moral duty as men to protect women. We also have a traditional duty as men to protect women. I'll go to the traditional. Why? Because we have this misconception that Africans don't value the rights of women. That is a lie. Very big lie. How do I know? If you read books like Things Fall Apart and other African narratives, you notice that women were very much protected. In fact, in several ways, more than they are protected now. Men always had the tendency to flaunt their strength. I mean physical strength, what I would call their brutality, because being brutal is not actually a sign of strength. So they were actually, yes, flaunting the wrong things. It has always been there. But in the African society, when it happened, there were clearly established protocols for managing the violence. For instance, the woman would go to her home. Her siblings and family would wait for you to come. In some cases, in traditional African society, some communities actually permitted the brothers of the wife to go and give the man a dose of the medicine. Traditional, as in, yes. So the African society had clear ways of managing domestic violence. And another thing we don't think about often is that traditionally in those days, when women were going to their farms, especially when they had maybe hostile communities not too far away, the men used to stand in front and behind with their machetes, showing protection. In the African society, it was a huge insult to beat another man's wife As a matter of fact, that was one of the major causes of even inter-community altercations or communal wars. That is, you don't beat, and even today, do you know that even today that carryover is affecting us? That is, we still assume that don't beat another man's wife, that you are not beating the woman, that you're also beating the husband. These are traditional values. What are those values now? So as individuals, there are so many things we are not doing right. Way too many. Now we are actually practicing this kind of Western non-interference approach. You know, in Africa, we had a communal lifestyle. Everybody's business was everybody's business. So if you were beating your wife in Africa, neighbors will come, neighbors will intervene, neighbors will, like we say in Pidgin, chook them out in the matter, whether you invite them or not. Today, people will stand in their own apartments and call out, hey, easy, take it easy. Yeah. So, you know, it's even considered inappropriate now for the people to, in the real African society, men will practically beat down your door if you lock it to come and rescue a woman. We have lost all those values as individuals.
It's even worse than the white, well, you know, the Western you're talking of, because the West will just make a phone call.
No, the West will make and the law will intervene immediately.
He won't come to knock on your door, but he could make a call.
I was even going to that because you said, what is it that we don't do as individuals? There is also an overlap between the individual responsibility and the societal responsibility. For instance, if you make that call he spoke about, or go to a police station to report, what does the policeman tell you? The policeman tells you that it's a family matter. Now we have the gender desk. I participated in the Nigerian policing program, and I can say clearly that in some police stations, the gender desk actually works, but not in too many stations. There are very few police stations that have gender desk where you can report gender violence and gender related matters, and they handle it professionally. Most of the stations don't have the gender desk. So the men who dominate the policing institution will first of all start by looking at the woman for insulting her, so you can't manage your home, that a wise woman builds her home. How do you build an animal? The man doesn't want to be built. So how do you build a man that doesn't want to be built? You know, because the society actually blames women for everything. So what are we not doing right as individuals? We have not taken responsibility to enforce the rights of women. That's the truth. If you want to summarize it, we have not been able to take responsibility as individuals. The individuals around Osinachi could have solved the problem without her consent. That is the truth of it.
Bypass her consent.
They don't need her consent to enforce the law. There were legal issues. So ask me from the human rights perspective. Anytime that man beat her up, he infringed on the law. Before even the VAP law, that was assault. If she was wounded, assault occasioning harm. But the VAP law has made it explicit. If a man beats the wife, it's an offense. If a woman beats her husband, which happens, but men don't talk about it often, it's also an offense. You know, these are real issues. So I think we also need to talk about the society. The society is not doing enough. But the church is a very, very interesting platform. I'll just talk about this in maybe 120 seconds. It's very important to talk about it. If you ask me, the institution that is most strategically placed to solve our human rights problem is the church. The institution that is most strategically placed to solve our national transformation issues is the church. But let's focus on human rights. The church is a place where all of the people who abuse us, or at least most of them, go to. The man who beat up Osinachi consistently he goes to church. In fact, he claims to be a pastor. I say he claims because now people ordain themselves, so you don't know who is a pastor, who is it. You know, so the man goes to church. He's supposedly a church leader. But one of the things the church is not doing enough is to create the clear platforms for protecting the church members and for transforming society. The church shouldn't just preach to people. The church should also ensure that the preaching is reasonably adhered to, at least within the places of influence. That's the place where they have influence. If, for instance, I control a church, I will do everything I can to see that the members of my church do not even abuse other members. I'm not talking of their wives. And if you insist on abusing your wife, we will do everything we can peacefully to stop it. But if you refuse to stop it, we should have a machinery in the church to also ensure that the law kicks in. The church has welfare units, for instance. The welfare unit sometimes will buy the woman a clothing when the husband tears her clothing. The welfare unit will give them food when the man neglects to provide food, which is actually illegal. That's abandonment of family under VAP law. It's an offense. So the point is, if we can give them food, why can't we try to address the source of the problem? Sorry, you see, this story perfectly illustrates. We must tell this story, and I will tell this story. Some people at Agwata are listening to us. They will enjoy this story. A woman was being brutalized by the late husband's brother, who wanted to marry her by force. Ikuchiwanye. To avoid embarrassing anybody, I won't mention the church she goes to. But this woman repeatedly reported to the church, and the church said, we don't have policemen. Very influential church, I'll leave it at that. The man would leave his own house, go to this woman's house, and insist on forcing himself on her. And the woman will fight all night. And then the next morning, the man took a room in an uncompleted building. Meanwhile, he had a completed palatial house. He would leave it to go to an uncompleted building that the husband left. And the church said clearly, we don't have the police. But that church had lawyers, had technocrats, had influential men, had priests. Unfortunately, they didn't do anything. The woman went to do Monna, because she asked a question. I want to illustrate the answer now. We've talked theoretically. The woman went to do Monna. The Monna advised the man. The man said, this is the tradition. The Monna told the woman, so what do we do? We have advised him, he doesn't listen. And that man was going to church. And the priest called him and said, this is not right, that you're a Christian. The man said, well, that is no menana, no can the buy some. This is in home movies. I saw it. How was the problem solved? The leader of Human Rights Volunteer Corps in Agwata reported the matter to us. And when we took the matter up, you won't believe it, the woman was even crying, saying that they warned her not to report to police, that in our community you don't report your own relation to the police. They warned her not to do this. You know what I told the woman? The matter was so complex, I invited her for a meeting. And when she finished telling us, I said, Madam, go home. We'll solve the problem. You are not going to report anybody. You are not going to do anything. The only thing I'll tell you is that any other time he beats you in the night, just tell us. That's all I ask of you. And when he did, we went to the police station. We wrote the petition. We wrote in the petition that the woman didn't inform us about the beating, that the woman didn't inform us about the petition or tell us to write the petition. That we decided on our own to write the petition because neighbors had her screaming. So we absolved the woman and we handled the case. The man was arrested. The man was put in the cell. They started. We insisted that they should prepare documents to charge the matter to court. This man was pleading. When the woman came to the station, we told the police to bring the woman whether she wanted to come or not. That man knelt down. I'm not exaggerating. I was begging the woman that if I come out of this, I will see you again anywhere near your house. That man, everybody who didn't want to get involved got involved finally. The priest got involved. The Uche got involved. PG got involved. Men who were indifferent suddenly got involved. Because they were even telling me things like it to scandalize our community. That our name. I said, what? So where was your name when this woman was suffering?
Sometimes.
Eventually, he signed an undertaking. And from that, this happened about 2011. From that time till now, if the man has any reason to go to the late brother's compound, he will stand at the gate and ask if he should, I'm not joking, ask, no, you know, should I come in? Even in daylight. Now, it took some people to stand up for her. That woman attended our paralegal training. We gave her scholarship to attend our paralegal training and made her an ambassador in her church. And she saved a lot of women. The fear of what we did with her made her an ambassador for human rights, and she saved a lot of women. Now that is, I gave you an example of how we function at the individual level, at the church level, at the community level. We don't want to take responsibility.
All right, let's get back. I will have asked one more question to Venerable. Let's do that as quickly as we can. Now, people who get into society come primarily from a family. Everybody comes from a family. Don't you think that we could talk about parenting here, because I believe that what she believed was taught her by someone, and if she had a better parenting, for instance, she would know her right. She would know that certain things are not right. And then here we have two institutions influencing the child back to back. We have the immediate family, and then of course immediately you're born, you're taken to the church. So can we talk about parenting and the influence of the family and the influence of the church in raising children and the way we've been raising them?
You know, it took a very long time for the society to start talking about sex education. And coming out from the doldrum of tradition said, tradition did not say, just like the story Larry narrated. I think basically low knowledge is a problem. If a family, a parent is not educated enough and they cannot pass the information they should, what will they do? How were they even raised in their own homes? You know, up till now, there are things that shouldn't be said. You see a father sleeping with a daughter, and when the information comes to the public domain, even the mother of the child will begin to beg and say, please don't let anybody know, don't let anybody know, because if they know, our family will be, you know, and it continues. Yes, it continues. I think what we need to do is to look at these issues more critically. I am this person. I've been in the secular world before coming into the church, so I think I'm better placed to look at both. When we don't take responsibilities of the ills of the society, it makes going to church even worse. I can't imagine myself as a pastor and hear the kind of story he related and keep quiet. Guilt will kill me. Because I know what I should do as a priest to make sure that that lady and her children are in good shape. And like he said, we have welfare committee where cases are reported. The only problem we have is that most of the people don't report cases they feel that, in quotes, family matters. They don't do that. So when you talk of the issue of parenting, a parent who feels that it's a family matter will also raise a child who will continue to say it's our family matter. A parent who went through a parent that went through abuse, grew in abuse and later got married and started running his or her own family, will also think that that is normal. Nobody should worry about that. Look, Obidogo baby, don't worry, over time it will resolve. It is not resolving because all they're just doing is to pass the baton. And as long as they're passing the baton, people are getting hurt more and more. So parenting is an issue, and I want to shock you that many parents don't even have time to parent their children. Most fathers are just ATM machine. They just come pam 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 and they collect and drop and they go. They don't know next to nothing that is happening in that family. And you know, the umunna, like he was saying, in those days, umunna if the umunna come up to a matter and say, no, this lady deserves a right to take a decision on her life without contravening any moral standards, that lady should be allowed, you know, to go. So umunna have failed their responsibility, as a church is also failing. If that story he said, it's a failure on the part of the church.
All right.
While also the immediate families, we want to encourage them to speak up.
me get back to the studio because we're running out of time. If you can do it in 1 minute, good. Who goes first? Okay, let me start with Venerable. You've listened to the audience, and so what are your concluding thoughts?
Well, I think like every other person, it's a disappointing outcome that the marriage that's supposed to be for better for worse ended up in debt. I want to advise every young person out there, if you are gifted, please be careful who you get married to, because your gifts will attract the good, the bad, the ugly. Most of the times their target is not the love they have or they have declared, but the fact that there are things they want to take. If it is true that this man stands in between her career, even try to extort money from her and all of that, then you know the reason why in the first place that marriage was contracted. Secondly, I want to encourage my colleagues, ministers of God, please don't joke with marriage counseling. A lot of things come out in marriage counseling. There is a particular one I don't miss. 2 questions. Why do you want to marry? You discover that a lot of you don't even know why they want to get married. It's a generic question. Number 2 is, what are your expectations in marriage? A lot of people are blank. And by the time we finish this, it takes me about 2 weeks to deal with these 2 issues. You see, a lot of things come out. If you don't do that, it's a problem. And I want to encourage every person getting married, make sure you have good marriage counseling. Because counseling is important. It will help you. I'm taking something from Larry this morning. And it is to introduce to every person coming to get married under me the VAP law. Oga, madam, there is this law. This law exists in case witness. Now this law exists. It will help our society. It's a point at which the society, the church, and all that are concerned should come together and make sure that no woman dies in any marriage. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. Okay, Larry Oguego, let's hear you.
Yeah, this is a very important subject, and I thank God for Venerable. I actually clapped when he said what he said, because change begins with me. Yeah. And he just took responsibility for change. The problem we have is that men are not taking responsibility. Women talk about the rights of women. It's our duty to protect women, actually, if we love them. And having said that, there's a point you raised that I just want to talk about in a few seconds, the issue of parenting. I always take every opportunity I have to salute my late father, Sasure Oguego, who was a role model in the issue of protecting women. My father didn't have to talk to us. We saw his relationship with my mother. It was simple to know how to treat women. We saw his relationship with my sisters. But beyond the relationship, my father taught us practically to respect our senior sisters. The fact that you are now a man and you have muscles, God help you if my father caught you thinking of disrespecting the senior sister. So men should take responsibility, both at home and elsewhere, on matters of protecting women. I must also encourage men of God, leaders of ministry, to take human rights seriously. I remember that this is important that I mention it, and I now understand where my friend, Reverend, is coming from, because before COVID, we approached our Lord Bishop Chukuma. I spoke about human rights. We submitted a proposal. Before we knew what was happening. He practically sent us to the person in charge of training. In fact, he was so passionate, I was puzzled. He practically ran ahead of us before COVID shut down that process. So I realized that there are some people who naturally are passionate about the right thing being done, irrespective of the platform where they find themselves. Some men of God are lukewarm. When you talk, they think, why should you be talking about human rights? We are talking about the gospel. But human rights is good news, actually. Yeah. So we should protect our own. Having said that,
enshrined in scripture.
We don't even want to talk about that. They feel replete with human rights issues. So what I think is, please, men, take responsibility. Let us protect women. If you don't want to protect them because you love them, just think about your mother, think about your sisters, think about your daughters, if you have beautiful daughters like me, and then you know why we should protect women. Right. We don't want another Osinachi incident.
Thank you, Larry Oguego. He's the National Coordinator of Human Rights Volunteer Corps. Thank you for your time and your thoughts.
It's my pleasure, Uche.
And thank you, Venerable Ven.Ezeji, Vicar, Christ Redemption Church, WTC, Ogui Enugu, and a development expert. Thank you, sir, for your thoughts and your time.
Thank you for having me.
And until tomorrow, when we bring you another edition of Viewpoint, the conversation is Uche Gabriel, and we want to say thank you for joining us.